I've hit it with my left foot, which was my weaker foot, and it seemed to take forever to go in. Then I didn't really know what to do because I didn't score that many goals, so I've just given it all that and jumped up. And it was right at the end where the City fans were.
Oh, the scenes in the behind the goal, yeah.
And you could see them giving it all that on there because it was fencing still then, and they're on the fences. Absolutely incredible.
The official Manchester City podcast. Watch the full video version of this show via City Plus now.
The ball laid back for Brightwell to hit it. Oh, what a great goal by Brightwell! A tremendous goal from the youngster who's only playing because Peter Reid is suspended.
Ian, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I know it's one that Paul and I have been really looking forward to. Have been chatting away before you've arrived. Let's start right from the beginning. I mean, you come from a very, very interesting family background. I mean, both your parents are Olympians, aren't they, for one? So just explain to us very quickly sort of about their sporting legacy before we get on to yours.
Yeah, mum and dad both Olympic athletes. Dad and mum, they were both 400 metre runners. Dad was the captain of the British Olympic team, Tokyo 1964. He'd gone into that Olympics he was a European 400 metre champion, 400 metre record holder. My mum had won the Commonwealth Games in 1962. They were engaged at the time for the 1964 Olympics. Dad got a silver medal in the 4x400, and mum got a silver in the 400. Went into the 800 metres, really without wanting to do it, because she'd come second in the 400, really disappointed. And Dad sort of tried to say, well, come on, you've got a qualifying time for the 800, go for it. And she said, nah, I just want to go shopping. This is a true story, by the way. Wanted to go shopping with a girl called Mary Rand. She'd won the gold in the long jump. So Dad said, no, go for it. She scraped through the qualifying round, scraped through the semi-final, got to the final, and she won by about 10 yards. New world record at that time, yeah.
Amazing.
And she got the gold medal, yeah. Fantastic achievement.
Do you think because the pressure was off her not wanting to do it, that she just went out there with no fear and just went for it rather than expecting to get a medal with the pressure having that?
I think you're right, Dickie, because her main event was the 400, and she was devastated that she'd not won the gold in that. A girl called Betty Cuthbert, Australian girl, she beat her in the final, and they'd both beat the previous world record. So she'd run pretty much as fast as she could for the 400. And like you say, she's gone into it. She wanted to go shopping, really, but
it's great.
That's why she's got the world record. She's got time to keep. Wants to carry on.
Yeah.
Was she going shopping afterwards? Is that why
she
went as quick as she did?
So she, So when it came to the actual final, the first lap for her was relatively slow because it's a 2-lap race. I can't remember. I think they went through in about a minute. But at the time, she could run 51 seconds for 400. So for her, that was relatively slow, even though it was a 2-lap race. And she said she was boxed in going down the back straight. And then it came to the final bend, and she was still boxed in. And if you've got any footage, please watch it, because it is a pretty amazing race. And she pulls out of the inside lane, and she just down the home straight. She actually really waltzed it. She made it look easy. So great achievement, and we're as a family really proud of what she did and what Dad did as well.
Yeah.
Because we mustn't forget him, because he was the British team captain at the time. He got a silver medal. He was disappointed that he didn't get a medal in the 400 final. He came fourth. But it's funny, at the time, Dad was 25, Mum was 22, and it was all amateur sport then. And so the Olympics finished, and that was in the October. They got married in the December, and basically retired from athletics.
Wow. So what did they do outside of it?
Previously, he'd been a lecturer. Mum was a school teacher. Mum, when she retired, had a family. My older brother Gary, he was born in 1965. I was 1968, and then brother David who also played at City. He was 1971. But out of the three of us, the three sons, Gary was probably the most talented athlete. Even though myself and David managed to get careers in professional football, Gary was a really talented actual runner. Well, he could do all sports, but he didn't really. You'll know this, Dick. If you're going to be a professional athlete or compete at the top level, you need drive, you need the talent, but the next bit is you need the drive and the willingness to go and do that. And Gary, he didn't have that. Now I think it might be because he was going into sport that mum and dad were doing.
Right. Yeah.
And they'd excelled in that. The European champion, European record holder, Olympic champion, world record holder. So it's pretty hard task to live up to. Even though mum and dad never pushed any of us into doing sports, they encouraged us. Yeah. They took us to any sport we wanted to do, really.
Well, I was going to ask if you felt like it was an advantage, especially for yourself and David, having parents that have been at the top level in a sport, because it also sounds, as you said, there's way more to them than just what they achieved on the field or on the track. So
it's not bad genes to have to.
It's not bad, is it? No. But did you feel like it was an advantage for yourself and David to have that sort of experience above you, as you say, not pushing you but encouraging you, and knowing that, as Dickie says, you've got the genes to back it up.
Like physically, it definitely was. Like, and it's weird because when you're at school, certainly primary school, you just your mum and dad, your mum and dad, and you don't realise what they've done until you get older, till you really become an adult. Like, because mum always used to win the the school sports, the parents ones.
It's a bit unfair.
Mum used to win it every year. She was obviously quite a good runner, but so that was always good fun. But they encouraged us, all three of us, to go and do whatever sport we wanted to, whether it be tennis, football, cricket. We'd try a hand at most stuff. And like for myself and David, football, that's what we seem to gravitate more towards. But just the upbringing in terms of the fitness, especially at that time, because we're going back into the early to mid-80s. And I said to my dad, wanted to get fit for football, or get fitter for football. And he said, right, okay, we'll do 400 metre training. And 400 metre training is pretty brutal.
I can imagine.
Hard work. And football training is, don't get me wrong. But that 400 metre training was, I think brutal is probably the most adequate word to describe it. But when I came to do pre-season and get into my football, I found it relatively easy, the football training at that time. And again, it was different pre-seasons.
I can vouch for that. But when I came up for Arsenal, I thought I could run. And I know we'll go on to the City time when I came. Do you remember Asa took us to Withenshaw Park just after he took the job? And it was a running session. I thought I can do all right here, but
miles ahead.
It was. But again, that was luck of the genes. But we said before, you've got to have that drive to be able to progress and to make yourself better. Yeah. And I think you'll find that with every professional athlete or any top athlete in any sport. That is the difference, because anyone can have natural talent, but you've got to want to be able to go that one step further.
Yeah. What's the saying? Hard work beats talent. If talent doesn't work hard, is that it?
It is. It's hard work all the time, and I think people outside, not just football but sports, I think they think it's pretty easy to do it.
Yeah.
And as Ian said, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you've not got that drive to work hard and work harder and improve yourself all the time for that, you don't go anywhere.
Yeah, and you've got to do that pretty much every day, or every day you're in training.
Yeah.
Because there's always people coming up, the kids coming up, or whether the club's going to sign somebody else. That you've always got that pressure to be able to, you're constantly having to prove yourself. And when you're in the moment, you don't really know you're doing it, do you? But looking back on it, it's a lot of hard work and effort that goes into it.
So when did it go, football, from being something that you enjoyed doing and you were really good at it, to something that you enjoyed doing and realising that you could really actually make a career out of it, do you think?
I suppose I got spotted as a 11-year-old by City, so I thought then I'd a little bit of a chance. I was under no illusions then. And then you get to 14 years old, and back then there was no academies. I'm not sure what it was when you were there, Dickie. You'd presume it'd be at Arsenal, but they had schoolboy forms.
Yeah.
You'd sign schoolboy when you were 14, but that just meant you couldn't sign at another professional club.
Yeah. YTS was it called, or was that a bit later?
Well, that was a bit later,
Later, right.
So that 16 you'd signed an apprenticeship, or it then became a YTS scheme, or a scholar.
YTS, yeah.
It'd be a scholar now, wouldn't it? So when I was 16, I got offered a apprenticeship, or a YTS, and my parents kind of said, well, I was doing me A-levels at school, just do your A-levels and then see where it takes you. So I didn't actually do the first year of YTS / apprenticeship, and then when I was 17, they offered me the same again, and I thought, if I don't take it, anything could happen between now and when I'm 18. I might get injured, or they might not fancy me, and I might not be playing well. So I signed full time with City when I was 17. And there was people like there was David White, Steve Redmond, Paul Lake, and Andy Hinchcliffe, Paul Molden, Ian Scott.
What a youth team that was, wasn't it?
Special, isn't it, when you look at it? Yeah,
it was. It was great. Ken Barnes was the chief scout, and we had Tony Buck and Glyn Pardo, icons of all three icons of the club, and they made us into a team because we chat between ourselves, myself, Lake and Whitey, we work here match days, and we chat between ourselves, and actually most of the players were centre forwards. So like Steve Redmond was a centre forward, but he made his career as a centre half. Andy Hinchcliffe, he's a left winger really. Andy becomes a left back. Don't know what I was really, but I ended up playing in the youth team as a centre half, but was never a centre half. Again, Lakey was a front player. Lakey could play in any position. Then you got people like Paul Molden and Ian Scott, who were actually the real big hitters at that stage. They'd come up through England schoolboys, and they were the ones that were the club really expected a lot of, and quite rightly, because they were really good players. And you had those guys, and then mixed in with the other lads that we had. We had a really good team, backed by a fantastic coaching team of Tony, Glyn, and Ken Barnes up at the top there.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about those three. I mean, obviously, Tony's recently passed away, which obviously everyone at the club's devastated about. How much of an influence do you feel it was having not just great coaches, but great people as well? I've seen obviously so many tributes coming out to Tony saying sometimes it was tough love, but it was always love as well. There was always that support network. So I mean, what did Tony, Glyn and Ken sort of do for you and the rest of the team, do you feel?
Like for me, outside my family, those three guys are the biggest influence on my footballing career. And they were all different people as well, like Tony was, if you didn't toe the line, you were out. Whereas Glyn was kind of the good guy. And then Ken, in his own way, was kind of the voice of reason, but you'd be told if you weren't doing it. He kind of kept out of it a bit, Ken, but he'd always be giving you little bits of advice. And I don't think anyone that has not worked with those guys, you can't really explain what they brought, but again, it was the drive and the passion and the expectations that they demanded of players. And it didn't matter who you were, they would demand. They were top players themselves. They'd won all the trophies. So you can't argue with them. But yeah, tough love's probably the perfect way to describe it, because really they wanted the best for you. And if you fell by the wayside, that was not tough, but that was, come on, you get yourself up. If you can't do it, we don't want you. It was pretty brutal. It was hard, and there was a lot of lads and kids that didn't make it, that were good players, but they couldn't handle the other side of it.
Yeah.
It's different now. Things have changed, and that isn't a criticism of Tony or Glyn or Ken, because that's the way it was.
That's how it was.
And
I think, as Ian said there as well, that they're not doing it to have a go at you. They're doing it to try and help you.
Yeah.
And at the time, you didn't know anything different, so you took it that way. If you were, as a young player, the coaches having a go at you, you wanted to prove them right. That you wanted to prove them wrong by reacting to what he's saying to you, and it was tough. But I was going to go into the youth team days. I mean, there's some players in that as well. But my best days, looking back now, was when I was in the youth team. Not just playing the games, but cleaning the changing rooms, cleaning the boots, and it creates a camaraderie around you, doesn't it?
Yeah. So who would you have had with you, just very quickly, at Arsenal in that
Pat
career?
Rice was the youth team manager,
Yeah.
and a bit like Skip, he didn't take any prisoners. It was sink or swim, and as Ian said, there was talented players that couldn't handle it, and that would fall away. But there was myself, Ray Parlour.
Yeah.
The year above was Andy Cole.
Yeah.
The year above that was Kevin Campbell, God bless him. Then there was Paul Merson and all that came through as well. But it was the same all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you spoke to any players of our era, they'd say exactly the same as what we're saying. And but the guys that you mentioned, Pat Rice there, I mean, an Arsenal legend, same as Tony and Glyn and Ken at City.
And as hard as they were on you, you didn't want to let them down, did you?
No, you didn't want to let them down, and you just the drive that they gave the players, and I mean, I remember we came in. We'd beaten, I think it was Leicester. We beat them 5-1 at Maine Road in one of the rounds of the Youth Cup. And Tony had us out after because he was happy with the result, but he wasn't particularly happy with the way we played.
Right.
And we ended up helping Stan Gibson, who was the groundsman at the time, put divots back.
Fantastic.
But to be fair, we all went out and we did it, and we had a bit of a laugh on the pitch because we'd won the game, putting the divots back, and it was just part of it. And you'd be cleaning the boots. End of season, you'd be regrouting the big bath. You'd be painting the stands, or they'd just find jobs for you to do.
Yeah.
But it was great fun, the camaraderie that you make and you get that, you take that out onto the pitch, because you have to look after each other as players off the pitch. And I think that was part of the psychology. They'd say, well, okay, go and put the divots on the pitch, and then they were probably watching us in the stands laughing to themselves. But at the same time, we were having a laugh together as a team, and it was all part of the psychology. I'm sure it was, and it worked, and it's worked for thousands of players of all clubs in previous years as well.
I mean, it definitely worked. Talk about let's move on to the Youth Cup final in '86, the first City team to win that. And I mean, as you say, you've reeled off some of those names earlier. The camaraderie and the bonding that you had off the pitch paid dividends on it by not only winning the Youth Cup but beating United as well.
Yeah, bonus. And we played Arsenal in the semi-final.
Yeah.
And Paul Merson was playing, Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
I'm sure Gus Caesar.
Gus would have played, yeah. Martin Hayes.
Yeah. I think,
I'm
not sure if Martin played, he might have been the year older. But certainly that era.
That was some team as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. They had for me, Arsenal were the best team in the competition in that year. We went down to Highbury and we lost 1-0 down there, and we came back to Maine Road. It was a really tough game. And we went into extra time. Basically, we went into extra time, and it was penalties. And Ian Scott scored the winning penalty for us.
Did you take one?
It was a fantastic end to a semi-final. We were all shattered.
Did you take a penalty?
No. I ended up getting cramped, seriously, because we were trying to get a goal in extra time, and Tony Bucky said, you go up front, get up front and try and just get a goal. And I ended up getting cramps, so I was crawling round. I was praying, come on lads, just finish this in 5. So that was a semi-final, and then we played United. We played them at Old Trafford in the first leg, and we drew that 1-1. Lakey scored the penalty. Thinking the players, Gary Walsh was in goal for them, Russell Beardsmore, winger, Lee Martin, left back. Lee went on to score in the FA Cup final for United. So they had a good side, but we were we were confident in beating them, especially when we'd got a good result at Old Trafford, and we brought them back to Maine Road, and you know, it was you know, big game with it being a derby game, and the Maine Road was packed, and they put an official attendance of 18,000, which was a big crowd, but we all knew that it was more than that. It was definitely more than that, and all the United fans had put them in the Platt Lane stand, and then, but we knew, because at the time we were getting sort of 20 odd thousand every week for the first team, but it was just as many for that night in the Youth Cup final, and it was a great atmosphere. And then we went on to beat them 2-0.
Yeah.
And we could have won probably 4 or 5, but it was a really convincing win. And it was David Boyd. We scored after, it was only a couple of minutes, and then Paul Molden scored. It was right near the end. I didn't realise there was that much of a gap, but we'd never seemed to be in trouble on the night, and we managed to beat them. And it was sweet, because it was against them lot over there.
Yeah. I suppose that's the first time a lot of you would have played in front of a crowd like that as well. Would it have been?
Yeah, it was. We most of us played in the Central League, the reserve team league, but you maybe get a couple of hundred people watching. But yeah, it's the first time. Steve Redmond had played in the first team previous to the final. I think Paul Molden probably had, so they'd had a little bit of experience. But the rest of us, it was new to us. But yeah, it was a great night, and especially with it being the first time the club had won the Youth Cup.
Yeah. Were you aware of that at the time? Or is that something that maybe you look back on and go, oh, actually, that's quite cool?
We're aware that it would have been the first time, because City had a great youth policy, and people were saying, oh, well, how come City have never won the Youth Cup? Right. Again, it was Ken Barnes that had been in charge of the youth policy, and the amount of players that he brought through and went on to make careers in football, either at City or elsewhere, it was phenomenal, really. But there was no pressure on us from the management or the club to go and win it just because it was the first time. It was just like, well, just go and win it because you like winning. It. And we'd won the Central. We'd won the Central League. We won the year after with most of those players, or a lot of those players. But the Lancashire League, which was the A team, which was like really the third team. I don't know what you'd compare it to in today's, but it was the youth team plus a few reserve team players and any first team players that were literally just coming back from injury, and we went unbeaten that season without. I don't think we lost a game that season.
Wow.
In the Lancashire League, and you had teams like Liverpool, Everton, Man United. All the big Burnley, all the big northern teams. It was a good league, and we went into the Youth Cup final really confident, because I don't think we'd lost a game.
Yeah.
So
sorry, go on, Paul.
No, it's some record, that though, and you think that, because you see teams that have won the FA Youth Cup and you think, oh, how many have actually went on to play for the first team? But the number of players that played at that time that went on to make their debut is remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, in our team, I mentioned before, Steve Redmond, myself, Andy Hinchcliffe, David White, Paul Lake, Ian Scott, Paul Molden, we all went into playing City's first team. Yeah. And we actually played one game where all 7 of us played in the same team.
That's unbelievable.
But then you can look back at other guys in different eras, the Beckford boys, Darren and Jason Beckford, Neil Lennon, Jerry Taggart, Earl Barrett, John Beresford.
Yeah. I suppose the key thing as well, it's not necessarily just lads that make it at City. You've got other lads that go on and have really good careers in the game as well. Yeah. It's just a really successful group of players.
So like John Beresford never played in City's first team. He went to Barnsley, Portsmouth, and he had a
really good
made
career.
His name at Newcastle.
Yeah.
I mean, what a player Bez was. Earl Barrett, similar, didn't play many first team games. He went to Oldham, then he went to Aston Villa, Everton.
Tags.
Jerry Taggart. I mean, again, went to Barnsley and had a brilliant kid. Neil Lennon.
Yeah.
And Neely's had a great management career as well.
Absolutely. Well, I suppose the other great thing that coming from that is you fast forward 3 years, and we're talking about not just beating United at Maine Road, you're talking about beating United 5-1 at Maine Road. Let's talk about the Maine Road massacre, shall we? I've been waiting all podcasts to talk about this. I mean, I'm sure you've talked about it thousands and thousands of times, and I'm sure that you never get tired of doing it as well, because, I mean, what a result, given the context of getting promoted that season. And you look at that United team, it maybe wasn't quite the United team that would go on to win the titles in the 90s, but, I mean, Mark Hughes, Paul Ince, people like that, it's still a seriously good team, isn't it?
Yeah, they had a good side. And Alex Ferguson was just, even that was probably just starting when they were starting to get that little bit better. But they'd just signed Paul Ince. I think it was one of the Wallace boys. Can't remember if it was Ray or Rod.
Rod Wallace.
Yeah. So there was Paul Ince, Wallace, Gary Pallister.
Yeah.
And they paid big money for him at the time. You know, a couple of million quid, which was big money. And then we. The game was coming up and we'd just been promoted. It was the first derby match in a couple of years, so the excitement was tremendous. But United were favourites going into the game. Yeah. But our team, it was a great mix of experience and really youth, because we were still only 20, 21, because you had people like Paul Cooper in goals, Gary Fleming at right back, Brian Gale, centre half. Then we just signed Ian Bishop from Bournemouth. And then David Oldfield, another, relatively young, but he was another new signing. And that was alongside Andy Hinchcliffe, Steve Redmond, myself, Paul Lake and David White. So it made a real... And I think Jay Speckford was on the bench that game as well and came on. But just the excitement of going into that game. The game kicked off, and after about 5 minutes, United, they were on top, but there was a bit of a scuffle.
There was a stop, wasn't there, in play?
Up in the north stand. So Neil Midgley was a referee, proper old school referee. Neil, these lights, thinking, well, he said, right lads, blew the whistle, said, off you get, and they got all the United fans that were in there down into the Platt Lane stand. We went up the tunnel at Maine Road. Remember the tunnel at Maine Road, Dickie? And about halfway up, there was a gym on the right hand side. I say a gym. It was just a big room with a rope for a head tennis net.
Right, yeah.
And Tony Buck was waiting for us by the door, because Tony was coach at the time, and he was ushering us all into the gym, whereas United went straight back up to their changing room. So Skip just got us passing balls, keeping warm, keeping stretching, on the move. Neil Midgley then blew up. I don't know how long it was. It seemed like 15 minutes, but it probably wasn't even that long. So we went back out onto the pitch, and of course we were still warm and ready to go, whereas United have had to sit in their changing room. We came out and we scored within probably 2-3 minutes of the restart, and then from that moment onwards, we got confidence and we got the second one, got the third one 3-0 up at half time.
Yeah.
And it was like, come on, get in there.
Yeah.
So we've gone in at half time, and then 3-0 is a good score to go in at half time. I don't really like 2-0, but 3-0 was good. But then we thought back at the end of the previous season where we got promotion, we were beating Bournemouth 3-0 at half time.
Right.
And we ended up drawing 3-3. So that, but for me, I don't know if the other lads thought it, thinking, we can't do that again, surely. Please, we can't do that.
Can you remember
again.
what the gaffer said at half time? Because that must have been a tough team talk. Cause
I can't. Mel Machin was a gaffer, but I honestly can't remember what he was saying. But probably, just keep it going, keep it tight, the usual stuff, and start quick when you go out. Go and start quick. So we've gone out, and what did we do? We conceded. Mark Hughes goes and scores.
Some
about
goal,
5
though,
minutes.
wasn't it?
Yeah,
Some goal.
Fabulous goal. But then another few minutes passed. The crowd were unbelievable that day, by the way. It was great atmosphere. And we went to the other end, and Lakey's beat 2 or 3 players and just squared it back for Dave Oldfield, who tapped it in. That was 4-1. And you could see then that United's
Game
heads...
over,
Yeah, you could see the heads go down. Because at 3-1, I think they thought they had a chance. At 4-1, they didn't. And then, for me, the best goal of the match was the final goal, where Ian Bishop got it.
Oh, the header.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's pinged it out to David White. White's first time ball, kind of on the half volley.
Some
And
ball,
Andy
man, it's a
Hinchcliffe,
great ball,
yeah.
isn't it?
Andy Hinchcliffe's come up at the back post from left back, and he smashed the header in.
Yeah.
And running past the Kippax, giving it 5. Yeah,
Brilliant.
great day, great memory that was.
There's a quote I got from Ian Bishop when I was looking up, and it sums it up as well. It's brilliant. He said it felt like the millionaires were coming to the terraced houses.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
right. It was. It was exactly that, because they were, they were big players, and a lot of the players that like Viv Anderson played. And what a career Viv Anderson!
European Cup winner.
Yeah.
Stuff like, yeah.
It was. They had some fabulous players, whether experienced, and it was. And it was nerve-wracking going out. They missed Brian Robson though, for sure. If Brian Robson had been playing for them, it'd have probably been a different game.
Right.
But he wasn't, and we took advantage of that, and we deservedly won, and put them back in the box.
Absolutely, I love that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I suppose as well, I mean, it was 13 years before we won a derby again. So
Yeah.
maybe, I mean, it's an incredible result anyway in performance, but maybe, do you think the fact that we had to wait that long for the next win and the last one at Maine Road made it even more special for the fans who remembered it at the time, do you think?
Yeah, it did, and because all the way through the 60s and even the 70s, like, certainly in the late 60s, early 70s, City were the dominant side. And then it was nip and tuck, probably late 70s, 80s, and then we got to that point and beat them 5-1, and then we had quite a lot of draws against them, but never seemed to be able to quite beat them. But when we did beat them again, which was the first time, it wasn't when Goat scored, was it? When
That was the
Might have
November,
been,
yeah. That was the 2002
the Gary Neville
one. Yeah.
slip, and
Anelka scored and Gota got 2, didn't
yeah.
he?
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, and then now, of course, it's the complete opposite. We're going into it being confident. Latest result discounted, but like we're the most dominant side in Manchester by a long way, and we have been for quite a number of years now, and quite rightly so.
I think it shows you how important that game was, though, because the fans still talk about it now, don't they?
Yeah.
All these years later about that game. I mean, as a player to win a Manchester derby, it must have been amazing. I mean, I think I got one draw in all my time I was here against them, and we celebrated that as if we'd won the World Cup that day at Old Trafford for a 1-0 draw. So to beat them and have the nostalgia behind it, and to hear the fans, and I mean, one of the first things when you were coming in to talk about, we couldn't wait to talk about the 5-1 game.
Yeah,
You know.
it was a fabulous day, and it, like I said before, it was the first derby in a couple of years, and we weren't really expected to win. That was the other factor of it. I think it is anyway. But to go and beat them so convincingly on the atmosphere. I can't describe what the atmosphere it was like, because the fans were literally going berserk. And then you look at the old footage now of the the Kippax and the North Stand, and that corner of the North, between the North Stand and the Kippax that had people in it as well. It was it was amazing. It really was. And being a City supporter myself as well, and most of the other local lads were City supporters as well. Just to have the bragging rights is an amazing feeling, yeah.
I mean, you think that's good, but then spanking one in from 25 yards at Old Trafford's not much more you can do from there, is there? I mean, has there ever been a better City goal at Old Trafford in your eyes? Or do you still
Not
have the
in my
title,
eyes.
do you reckon?
Obviously not.
No.
Still got the title.
No, it was again, that was in the same season.
Yeah,
and we'd gone to Old Trafford, and by that time Howard Kendall was manager, and Peter Reid had he was really the first choice in midfield at that time, quite rightly, and Reedy was suspended for that game. And the previous week, Howard had taken us to the Isle of Man just for a mid-season break, a bit of a drink and a bit of fun. But it was good. We played the Isle of Man national side, who, no disrespect, but they're the Sunday League side really. But we played them because it got a crowd in. It was all very relaxed, and we were coming home on probably on the Sunday or the Monday morning back from that trip, and Howard Kendall said, he said you'll be playing Saturday. He said, just to let you know, I'm going to tell you now, you'll be playing Saturday in the derby match. Reedy's suspended, but I want you, and you will be playing. Which was, like, for me, that it was great. Some people might think, oh well, I've got a week to think about it. But I'd played in games before. It wasn't like I was a young player, or I was probably 21 at the time, but I'd had a lot of experience in the first team. But it just gave me confidence that I would be playing and time to prepare. And then we went there, and Clayton Blackmore scored for him first. And I won't tell you the full story because it involves a bit of language. But
go on.
So we had a throw in down on the right hand side, and Lakey took a throw in to Mark Ward. Ward is cross the ball, but it's deflected out. And when you've got a big crowd, because it'll be 50 odd thousand at Old Trafford, you don't really hear anything, do you? It's just like everything's a noise, just a loud noise. So the ball's coming across, but the only thing I heard was Stevie Redmond, who's playing centre half. As the ball's coming across towards me, I've just heard in his Scouse accent. So I did. I've hit it with my left foot, which was my weaker foot, and I've hit it, and it seemed to take forever to go in, but I'm thinking that's going to go in, and of course it went in. Then I didn't really know what to do, so I ran off, and because I didn't score that many goals, so I've just give it all that and jumped up. Kind of realised, hang on, I've just scored in a Manchester derby here. And it was right at the end where the City fans were.
Oh, the
in
scenes
the
behind the
paddock
goal,
behind, and you could see them giving it all that on because it was fencing still then, and they're on the fences. Absolutely incredible feeling to be able to do that. And then after the game, I got interviewed by ITV, and they said, "Can you tell us what you were thinking when the goal went in?" I said, "Well," I thought, I can't. Tell them what I've just told you. So I said, well, the ball came across and I just wellied it. Yeah. And that was, and people still come up to me and say, you just wellied it. And that was a phrase that's kind of stuck with me. And but that wasn't the real reason.
The PC version.
I like the original phrase, I think.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's typical Reddo in his Scouse accent.
No airs and graces with that one.
Oh, it's no, but we should have won that game. We had loads of chances. We couldn't seem to get the ball in the back of the net. I'd say Howard Kendall was manager, and Howard had rejuvenated the team, and he'd rejuvenated the club at that time. He'd brought in some experienced players, people like Peter Reid, Adrian Heath, Wayne Clark, Neil Poynton, Adrian Heath, Alan Harper. Ex-Everton players, and there was a big thing at the time saying about they were ex-Everton, which they were, but they hadn't been signed from Everton. Yeah, they'd been signed from different clubs. The only one that signed from Everton was Neil Poynton. But these lads had a vast wealth of experience. They'd won leagues, they'd won FA Cups, they'd won European Cup Winners' Cups between them, and that for us young lads coming through to have, these ex-Everton lads, as they were called, it was a massive boost for not only us but for the club, to have their experience, because they were all winners and they'd been there and they'd done it and they knew how to win and they knew how to win trophies, and that was a good period. And then Howard went off to back to Everton, which was his first love, which was people have to understand that. And then Peter Reid took over, and I thought Reedy did a really good job over the 2.5 years he was there. We finished fifth. I think it was 9th in consecutive.
That's what I've got written down here.
Right, record, that, isn't it?
It's very impressive.
Which was at the time it was the best the club had done since the, certainly in the mid 70s. So the club was on the way up really, and then Reedy got the sack. Brian Horton came in. Brian, again, he brought players in, and he brought players like Peter Beagrie on the left, Nick Summerby right, Uwe Rossler came in, Niall Quinn was already there, and Paul Walsh. So we had a forward line of those 5 players, and Brian played some really, really good football, and the fans loved it. And
was it a bit of a surprise then that, because I mean, like you say, the football, some of it was sublime. I was going to talk about the famous Spurs game at Maine Road, the 5-2, but do you feel like the football was great? Should maybe the team, the way they were playing, have finished higher than maybe what actually ended up happening at the time? Because it was sort of mid-table finishes, wasn't it? Maybe feel like team could have done more in a different scenario.
I think, looking back on it, and even when Peter Reid was there and we finished 9th, I didn't realise this until recently. We were like 3rd up until about 6 games to go in that season. Then we had a bad end of season, and that, of course, moves you down a lot of places. I'm not saying we could have won the league at that time, because you had teams like Liverpool, Everton, Arsenal. Leeds were a big force as well then. But I certainly think we could have done better in the cups, in the FA Cup, League Cups, with the squads that we had. And it was different types of football as well. Peter Reid and Howard Kendall were more direct, but very, very, very organised. And they had, didn't really have, I can't remember doing tactics and all that stuff, can you? And not really much coaching, was
that the other day then, they were saying, can you remember doing like team play, formation, or even set pieces sometimes, or phases of play? That was never a thing, wasn't it? We just went out and
they almost expected you to be able to play, didn't
they?
Yeah,
right.
They almost expected you to be able to play, and if you couldn't do it, you didn't play, type of thing.
You weren't in the team,
Yeah,
right.
It was like, for me, that was great, because I'm not sure they have loads of information now, which is incredible. The science and the sports science that goes into it.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure I could take that much information on.
Yeah,
information overload, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we really just like you'd all be given a job, obviously. Whether if like Dick would be told to go and score some goals and go and
rat about,
and that was really Dick's job. Depending on where I was playing, my would like go and tackle someone, or go and win the ball and give it to Georgie King Clancy, or give it to Dickie, and let them do the rest, type of thing. But even set pieces, it was like you're marking him, and that's it. And if you didn't mark him, he'd come in at half time or the end of the game, and he'd get a rollicking if they'd scored off.
That's your man. Make sure he doesn't score. That's how it was.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we move on, Paul, I'm interested, because obviously we're talking about the City team before you joined the club. What was your perspective of that City team that Ian's been talking about, that late 80s, early 90s team that was challenging, really?
Yeah, just fantastic team. There was always a big thing, even though I was down in London with Arsenal and everything else, about the young players like Ian, Whitey, Lakey, all these young players that were coming through, and it was a big thing at the time. I was touching it before, for so many youth team players to actually then go and play in the first team on a regular basis. And I'll go back to what you said before and play devil's advocate about that team under Brian Horton, because they played some wonderful football.
Yeah.
But you've got to be careful what you wish for sometimes. I know you said there about finishing mid-table-ish and not being good enough. You fast forward a couple of years, you would have snapped your hand off.
Yeah.
For that club to finish in that position and play the football with the players that they had at that time. So it was always a tough place to go, Maine Road, for a start, but always, not just the fans, but the team is always really respected because of the football that they played. And one of the big reasons, I think I've told you this before, that I signed for the club the season before I actually did. I was in the squad. I was always 15th man at Arsenal. I was always the one that was stuck up in the stand, and it was a really close game. I think you played, Bob. Ian Wright scored. It was 1-0.
Yes, yeah.
And he celebrated all the way in front of the cap, actually ran all the way down. And I remember the fans being amazing, but I remember them abusing Wrighty for scoring the goal, but then they applauded him off the pitch.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this is a proper football club if you didn't know about it at the time. And then fast forward a few months, that's when I got the phone call to sign. Thought I was signing for Southampton. Got the call from Alan Ball, and that game stuck in my head, just how good the atmosphere was at Maine Road, the team that they had at the time as well, because that Arsenal team was a top team, and these were unfortunate not to win that day as well.
Yeah, as I say, Arsenal and because when George Graham took over really from in the sort of late 80s, wasn't it, when George took over and he'd taken them to big things. So, and then we knew about Dickie, when he signed, because people and Niall Quinn had been at Arsenal as well.
Yeah, of course.
So we knew all about him and what he was all about.
I used to clean Quinny's boots.
Did you?
Yeah. But as I would put my hand in them, they were that big, they were halfway up my arm here on the size of them to get it done.
Was that at City when you were both playing?
That was at Arsenal.
Together?
Yeah, I was at Arsenal. But it was a joke because they sold Quinny and signed me, so very similar. One was 6'6", one was 4'10".
4'6".
Yeah, I'll take that. Actually.
Brilliant. Very quickly on that Spurs game, because we mentioned it earlier. Why do you think? I was going to say, why do you think it's still talked about? But I mean, it was just an incredible game. That's why it was talked about. Why do you think it clicked in that particular game, that particular moment? Because, we think about that Spurs team as well. I mean, you've got Klinsmann, you've got Popescu, people like that. They did play a very sort of attacking, open style, a Spurs style of play. But why do you think it all just fell into place for that particular game?
I think, if you look at it, they had, like you've mentioned there, Klinsmann, is it Dumitrescu as well?
Yeah.
Petrescu. They had some big international players along with, the homegrown players and the Spurs players that had been there a while. They had a really, it was a top side, good typical Spurs side, certainly for that day. Really open football.
Great to watch.
And we were playing that type of football as well. So I think that had, from the start of the game, it all had the chance of being a big, high-scoring match, just because of the way that the two teams played. So we had Biggs on the left, Nicky on the right, and then Walsh played. Walsh had a brilliant game for City. Paul Walsh that game. Uwe, and then Gary Flitcroft.
Yeah.
And I think Stevie Lomas played as well in central midfield. And they big engines, cracking football players, but they could get up and down the pitch. But it was like, from what I remember, it was like a real end-to-end game, and it could have gone either way at first. And I played we were playing a 3 at the back that game. I was playing in the back 3, and of course Klinsmann was playing. I remember Paul Power saying to me the day before. He said, "All the best." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "You know Klinsmann's playing, don't you?"
Cheers.
But it was. But he was different class. Klinsmann was. He was. His movement was probably his actual movement on and off the ball was probably the best that I've played against. He was quick. He was tall, but he wasn't a big bloke. He was really athletic, and he'd knock the ball off and he'd be gone, and he'd be trying to find the ball again or trying to score a goal. So that was my work cut out for the day. But luckily for me on that day, the other lads produced, and we ended up scoring 5, beating them 5-2. But Paul Walsh on that particular day, he seemed to be everywhere. Walshy did. Now he'd played for Spurs. One of his previous clubs was Spurs, so that's probably an incentive for him. But the work rate, and then you had Biggs doing his skills down on the left hand side and getting the ball in the box. But just great football from both sides. And we happened to come out big winners at the day, and I think quite rightly people talk about that game just because of the spectacle that it was, and the amount of goals, and the way the football was played. Probably certainly for the time, typical City. 2 wingers. City traditionally had played with wingers, and Brian Horton set the team up that day to play like that, and it worked.
Yeah. Toughest you faced, Klinsmann, do you reckon?
One of the toughest. I was lucky, played an era against a lot of top players: Gascoigne, John Barnes, Peter Beardsley, the David Ginola. Some fabulous players. But for me, the 2 toughest opponents, and I'll do 2, and unfortunately pay for them over the road. Was Brian Robson.
Yeah.
Brian Robson could do everything. He could run, he could tackle, he could play football, he could score goals, he could edit. He was a brilliant leader, and I say you can't get near him. Honestly, I was playing midfield against him, and just the runs that he was making, he was non-stop. You kick him, he'd kick you back.
Yeah.
You'd kick him again, he'd kick you back even harder. And he wouldn't, but he could do literally anything, and he was brave. You know, he'd put his head in where it hurt, he'd tackle where it had hurt. He didn't. There was no quarter drawn with Brian Robson, and he'd have, bar his injuries, he'd have probably gone, you know, be England's cap record holder. I think he got 89 caps, but a lot of the time he'd got injuries, but purely he got his injuries for.
Was that brave?
Yeah, he was that brave. Yeah, literally. So it's Brian Robson and Eric Cantona was the other one. Different type of player. He had that aura about him. You know, you see him now with his collars up, and that's how he was on the pitch. And he's a big bloke, isn't he? You know, 6'2", 6'3". Yeah, when he like marking him, thinking. Intelligent player. Not really. He'd make runs, but he wouldn't run you off the park. He'd just make little runs, or he'd just step off you, and he just knew exactly where he wanted to be and where he wanted the ball to be played. And we played. I think I'm sure you did. You play in it? We played. Actually, I don't think you'd signed Dickie. It was the 1996. We played United at Maine Road.
Summer.
Yeah, I think you signed in the
season,
pre-season, didn't you? And it was one of the games near the end of the season, and we were playing United at Maine Road, and Cantona was playing, and Alan Ball said to me, right, man mark Cantona. So the game's kicking off, and they scored. I think they were winning 2-1, and I was literally man marking Cantona, and he's kind of looked down at me like he does, and he's walked off to the halfway line right by the kip-axe, and I'm thinking, do I go over with him? So I thought, well, I've got to. Gaffer's told me to do that. So he's standing on the halfway line by the kip-axe, and I'm standing next to him, and he's just happy for the game to go on around him, because he knew that, okay, you mark me, I don't care, we'll play 10v10.
Yeah.
So I'm like shouting over to Alan Ball, what do you want me to do? He said, like, stay with him. Anyway, half-time came, and I said to Alan Ball, I said, what do you want me to do, Gaffer? He said, just leave him alone. He said, just let him do what he wants. And we actually lost the game. Ryan Giggs scored a goal, smashed it in from 25 yards, and they won that game 3-2, which was really disappointing, because we had some real good chances to win that game, or certainly get something from it. And it was Mikel Kavalashvili. He had a one-on-one with Peter Schmeichel, and he's thinking he's going to put it away, Mikel. And to be fair, he absolutely smashed it. But Schmeichel did that, that big spread he did,
massive, yeah.
And he got it right in the face, but he took it, you know, an inch either side. It's in the back of the net. They went up the other end, and Giggsy scored. So another defeat to them.
It's fine margins, isn't it?
Yeah, it is exactly. Yeah. But yeah, going back to Brian Robson and Eric Cantona, they were probably the two outstanding ones, even though there was many others that we played against.
Yeah. What about you, Paul, out of interest, before we move on?
Toughest player?
Yeah.
Mine was Ledley King, which a lot of people quite, because you've got your, like Ian said, so many unbelievable, like your John Terrys, your Rios, your Sol Campbells. But Ledley was quick, strong, unbelievable, and it could play. But he was unflappable. He was probably one of the centre-halves I couldn't get under his skin. And I used to try. The others I could, even if they're bigger, stronger, better footballers than me, I would find a way to try and get at them under their skin or ratting them. And I remember my second spell at the Etihad, we're playing Tottenham, the balls went into the corner, and Ledley's shielding it out, and I've just absolutely volleyed him. And he's went over the advertising boards, and he's went down into the little ditch behind it, and I thought, I'm going to get some reaction here. And he's just got up and he's went like that. And he just ran straight past me, and I thought, I'm going to have to play another centre-half now all game, because he had absolutely everything. And I believe that if he didn't have the injuries that he had, he would have went on to possibly be as good as, if not better, and get more caps than your Terrys, your Rios, and your Sol Campbells, because he just had everything.
Yeah. Like you say, almost the Brian Robson situation where, I mean, Brian Robson achieved so much, Leslie King achieved a lot in his career, but it's a shame when injuries kind of get in the way of it. Talking about toughest players you played against, so probably one of the best players you've both played with, we've got to talk about King Cladsley quick. Very quickly, I mean, what was he like to play with, and firstly as well to train with? Because I imagine trying to keep hold of him in training was pretty hard.
He's a great lad, wasn't he, George? He still is,
yeah.
We still see him and that, but he's a great lad, but he'd drive you mad. He would literally drive you mad in training. But it'd have been Alan Ball when he's first signed him, and we used to do like running, pre-season running, you're doing, and George, he'd just sit at the back, not much faster than a walk. And like we'd all be like sweating cobs, and Alan Ball then realised, well, if we give him a football and we do running, so we set up, doggy runs, set up doggies with the football. And of course, Georgie, he was the front in every race, just because he had a football at his feet.
Really?
And that was him. He was only interested when he had
the ball.
Had the ball at his feet. But if you could accommodate him, which that was a problem at the time.
Big problem, wasn't it?
We really used to play 4-4-2, didn't we? Or what would be was it 3-5-2? Those sort of systems he didn't really fit into any of those systems, did he? I think if he'd been playing in the modern day football, someone would have, certainly Pep would have found him somewhere to play. But Pep would have made him work a lot harder, by the way, as well. But talent-wise, he's certainly the best that I've played with, talent-wise, just because, he could make you look stupid, couldn't he? And he'd do it every day in training, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he could not make you with your legs closed.
Yeah.
He was that.
And he'd laugh as well, wouldn't he?
I was just going to say that. I used to really, I wanted to leather him sometimes because he would just.
And he only used his left foot, didn't he? But you think, as a defender, I'm thinking, right, we'll get him onto his right foot. Yeah. It's basic, isn't it? But you'd get close to him and he'd just do like a little shimmy, put you slightly off balance. He'd get the ball back onto his left foot, and he was either gone or he'd nutmegged you, hadn't he? Laughing. He was a massive talent.
Yeah, super talent. I mean, Joe said eventually when he sold him that he was one of the best players they had, but as you said, he just couldn't. At that time, the position the club was in as well, you needed 11 players off the ball that were going to work their socks off, and that wasn't Georgie's attribute. Georgie's attribute was to get 9 players around him doing all his work and just basically let him go and do his stuff.
We played at Blackburn. I remember playing at Blackburn Rovers away, and Blackburn were a really good side team, at the time. And they had Stuart Ripley was on their right. Who was the full-back? Can't remember. Might have been Jeff Kenner. They had Jeff Kenner and Stuart Ripley on the right, and I was playing left-back that day. And we were kind of playing a 4-3-3, but Georgie was meant to be on the left side. And it was the worst night of football I've ever had. I had Kenner and Ripley absolutely ripping me, literally down their right flank. I couldn't keep up. I'm shouting, Georgie, and he's just like trying to get other players, and other players were trying to help out.
He had no interest in it.
He had no interest. I said, just come and stand here. Please, just stand there and just be a body. Nah.
Brilliant.
No. But when he got the ball, I mean, some of the goals that he scored, you look back at the goals, they talk about the Southampton goal, but he scored West Ham, sort of fantastic goal against them.
FA Cup.
I think Oxford. And then there's a clip, he didn't actually score in it. We were playing Newcastle, and he must have beaten 6 players, and they were, because back in the day you could go and chop someone down, couldn't you? They were trying to hack him down, and they couldn't get near him. And it was on the dugout side at Maine Road, just outside the penalty area, going towards the Kippax. I'm sure it was Newcastle, and they were top of the league at the side at the time. But he was just making a mockery of it, and he wasn't laughing at him, but you could see that he was like thinking, "Hey, come on, next man, next one."
Yeah,
and he made it look easy.
Amazing. I mean, appreciate your time here. I know we've been talking for ages, so very quickly, I just wanted to talk to you about sort of the final few years at City. I mean, obviously there was following the relegation, we've then got 33 days with Steve Coppell, a pretty turbulent time for the club generally. How did you both sort of feel within reason of what you want to say about how that was, but then also how much pleasure did you then take both seeing the club rise again over the next few years?
Yeah, so that period from when Alan Ball got sacked, let's say to when I left, which was 1998, Steve Coppell came in, didn't he?
Yeah.
And Phil Neal took over from Steve. Then Asa Hartford briefly as a caretaker.
Yeah.
Frank Clark.
And then Joe.
And then
Big
Royal,
Joe, yeah. So you had, 6 managers within, 2 years really, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I had 5 in 5 months.
Yeah.
When I first signed. I signed on the Friday for Alan Ball. Made my
Oh,
debut.
good, yeah.
Stoke away.
Yeah, remember that.
And I woke up and it was teletext. Me and Jan were in the hotel. Jan was pregnant. I put teletext on that says Alan Ball's sacked. I was like, I hadn't been at the club 48 hours. Then it was Asa, Steve Coppell, Phil Neal, and Frank Clark in the January. It was madness, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I think there was 52 professionals when Joe Royal came in.
56.
Was it 56?
Yeah.
Yeah, 56 professionals. And what had happened, you'd get... there was like factions, wasn't there? There was like the lads. Okay, the lads or the squad that was playing, they were kind of in one changing room area.
3 different changing rooms at Platt Lane, wasn't there?
And then you'd get 2 or 3 other changing rooms because it was smaller changing rooms. But some of the lads, they knew they were never going to play, so they weren't bothered. They literally weren't bothered. It got really toxic, I thought.
It did. And every manager that came in, whether it was caretaker or not, was allowed to sign their own players without necessarily getting any players out.
No, because a lot of players had been signed and they couldn't get rid of them because they're on long contracts.
Yeah. When it came to having to
leaving.
leave the club, was that your decision, the club's decision? And how did you feel after when you said you've been there since you've been 11 years old?
Yeah, I was. I was gutted.
Yeah.
I was. Frank Clark had offered me a contract. Then of course, Frank got the sack. Joe Royal came in. Joe was actually good with me, but he got me in at the end of the season. He said, "Listen, I can't offer you a contract because you're out of contract." I was actually out of contract. There's myself, Kit Simons was out of contract, and Uwe were all out of contract. So I've got to let you go because we can't afford it. We've got 50 odd players here.
Yeah.
And I actually went to Coventry. It's when Gordon Strachan was manager. People like Gary McAllister, Dion Dublin, Darren Huckabee, they were all there. So professionally, it was a really good move. But yeah, I was gutted, devastated when I left City because it was my boyhood club.
Yeah.
Team I supported. I'd been there 20 odd years. I was 31 when I left, and it was difficult. And I went to Coventry, and no disrespect to them, but it wasn't half the club that City were, even though they were still in the Premier League. So yeah, it was hard, but that happens in football. I count myself lucky and privileged to be able to spend 20 years of my life associated with City, of which 12, 13 were playing professionally and in the first team as well. Played nearly 400 games for the club. So I look back and I feel proud, that I've been able to do that and privileged to be able to play for such a wonderful football club. And I still I work here match days now in the hospitality, which is fabulous. The club are great with all the lads that work with us, people like Joe Corrigan, David White, Paul Lake, Richard Edgill, Alex Williams, Peter Barnes, Tommy Booth, some real proper, in my eyes, legends that we're lucky to work alongside. I grew up watching people like Joe and Peter Barnes and Tommy Booth and Alex. So it's a privilege to be still involved in the club, and I'm, like I say, I'm proud that I was able to play for the club for so long.
Yeah, well, it's a privilege to have you still at the club as well, for sure. I could speak to you all day, but we've run out of time, unfortunately. But we always ask our guests to leave a question which also means that you now have to answer a question from our previous guest, which was James McAtee. He asked, it's actually quite a tough question, because he asked, what's your favourite Oasis song? But you can't pick, what was it? It was Supersonic and Wonderwall, wasn't it? So yeah, what's your favourite Oasis song apart from Supersonic or Wonderwall?
I think that's got to be when we played Liverpool last game of the season, 96, and we got relegated, from the Premier League. Everyone was really down, and we went into a box after, and Liam Gallagher was in the box, and he was brilliant with us, to be fair. He was, he was consoling us, and he said, listen, don't look back in anger. So it's got to be that one, just because of the...
It's a great story, isn't it?
It's unreal.
Yeah. It was, but the Oasis lads are fantastic. We see probably no more than Liam nowadays, but great lads, and they've been fantastic for the club. And yeah. What singer-songwriters they are, that's the main thing, isn't it?
I don't know what answer I was expecting, but that's a cracking one, isn't it?
It's going to be hard to beat that, isn't it?
Brilliant, yeah. Amazing. And can you think of a question you might want to ask the next guest? So we don't know who it is. It could be one of your former teammates, a current player, a famous person who's a City fan. Anything you want to ask them.
Okay. What is your favourite curry?
Oh, that's
and
a
it can't be a korma, because that's too tame.
Because they're not a child, yeah.
Yeah. The hotter the better.
You're a fan.
You get more points for the hotter it is. Yeah. But yeah, what's your favourite curry?
I've got a story about having a curry, but we've not got long enough to
no, not allowed. Maybe off camera.
That one, yeah.
Brilliant question, love it. Well, Ian, thanks so much for your time again. Really appreciate it. And all the best.
Thanks, lads.
Brilliant, thanks.
Amazing. Nice one. Thank you.
The unbeatable official Manchester City podcast. Watch the full video version of this show via City Plus now.